All right, next up, your son, your daughter, they've done everything right. They've got their degree, they've got a job, but they're still stuck at home because they can't find an affordable place to call home. My next guests, they've got some great ideas, particularly when it comes to condos and rental supply, to make home ownership within reach. No doubt one of the biggest issues people talk about in the province, particularly the GTA, but also Ottawa, London, Windsor, Niagara, and that's the ability to get an affordable place to call home. I talk about this a lot. Will the next generation be able to get a place? The millennials, will they be shut out living in mom and dad's basement forever? Or are there actually solutions on the table to make sure that your son or daughter can get a place on their own, move out, and move ahead in life? Here to talk to us about that exact topic, two guests from ResCon. Richard Lyle, he is the president of ResCon. He's represented the residential building industry in Ontario since 1991 in that capacity. Was with the Toronto Apartment Builders Association before that, the Residential Construction Labor Bureau. And get this, before that, he worked for Pizza Pizza. That makes you real. And then Paul DeBaratis is the Director of Building Science and Innovation with ResCon. Paul and his wife had a first child, their daughter, Celeste.
Thank you.
Congrats. Yep. How's little Celeste doing?
She's doing great.
Good. Well, gentlemen, let's start out for the audience here on the Bell Talk Radio Network. ResCon. Okay, that sounds like a transformer, right? Like Megatron, Optimus Prime, and ResCon. What side is ResCon on?
We're on the right side. We're part of the good guys.
There you go. So tell us a bit about what ResCon is exactly.
Sure. ResCon is a builders council, so all of our members are builders, high-rise and low-rise housing, new, what we call production-type housing, so condominiums and tract housing in the suburbs. We're active very much so in the central Ontario area, but also across the province. And in fact, we've got some members that are building outside of Canada, in the United States and in other, out in Western Canada as well too. And our main focus is on issues related to the actual construction of buildings, so health and safety, technical standards, training, apprenticeship, and so on. And building regulations, of course, are very important in the approvals process because we like to build.
Well, let's talk a bit about that because in my full-time job, my real job, I'm the CEO of the Ontario Real Estate Association. So Richard and Paul, every day I've got somebody saying, hey, my son, he did the right thing. He got his degree. My daughter, she's moving ahead with a career, but she's still living at home because they can't find a place, so they're renting a shoebox apartment. So we got to get more supply. And the biggest issue I find is the amount of red tape that drives up costs and slow things down. You folks actually partnered with the University of Toronto, Building Tall Coalition.
Yeah, we set up a Building Tall research center with...
Tell us a bit about what that was all about.
Department of Engineering at University of Toronto. Well, we've partnered with a number of academic institutions. We're very proud, in particular, of the relationship with U of T Engineering because we wanted a very rigorous and robust analytical partner that we could work with to look at issues that have not really been addressed. One in particular being the recent report that we did on the City of Toronto, looking at 174 tall building projects over 10 years.
9 years plus to actually get a building through the red tape process and built in Toronto. Like that's got to be one of the worst cases in North America.
Well, actually, the rule of thumb for our industry is now it's somewhat over 10 years from concept to occupancy to get something built. Those kinds of delays eventually come out of the pockets of buyers.
Yeah, I mean, every month that there's a delay in a project, that means with construction inflation, that becomes more expensive.
Huge.
And the farther out of reach over a 10-year period, that piles up. So that dream of home ownership will slip out of the reach of the millennial generation with these increased costs.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, things have gotten completely out of control. We've got situations in Toronto where young people that are even in the top 1% income earners are having trouble buying a home. That's crazy.
I'm speaking with Richard Lyle, the president of ResCon, and Paul DeBaratis, who is the director of Building Science and Innovation. So, Paul, tell us a bit about the research that you did as well with Ryerson University.
So the research with Ryerson actually looked at the site plan approval process, and the research with U of T looked at official plan and zoning bylaw amendment. So, for example, the city is committed to a 9-month approvals process for zoning bylaw amendment or official plan amendment. And what we found is that was not even achievable in 2006, which is when our data set started. It was typically closer to 10 months to a year. Moving forward to 2016, we're looking at 3.5 years to achieve that same process.
Well, number one, you point out in your reports, too, that every delay means the city doesn't get tax revenue. They're always looking for tax revenue. I think you said it's about $8.8 million for a typical building delay. But look, I mean, if I didn't pay my taxes on time, they wouldn't give me a 9-month to 2-year extension. There should be some consequences.
For sure, some accountability. And these are targets that the city has set themselves, and they're not even following their own targets. So that's something that we would like greater transparency on, and some accountability for these departments in the city of Toronto.
And looking through your reports, you talk about e-permitting, which is basically what everybody else seems to do in their job. You can send in, well, the city collected my recent speeding ticket electronically. So you're telling me that you have to actually bring in hard paper copies and boxes for planning approval still?
Oh yeah, I mean it's medieval in some respects. You still have departments that are printing off multiple copies of documents to send out to various applicable agencies. People pulling out, tracing paper to do their work on plans, reviews, and so on and so forth. And then if you look at the number one jurisdiction in the world for building approvals management, which is Singapore. And by the way, we're not anywhere near that. I'll come to that in a moment. I mean, they have everything is completely electronic. In fact, and it's based on building information management platforms called BIM. It's all electronic and very efficient. Interesting. In a former life, I was in the world of international trade. I actually worked for the government there too. And there was an interesting metric that came out of the World Bank on places to do business. We ranked 57th out of 190 countries on construction permitting.
Okay.
And that's a GTA metric, by the way. And 57th is nothing to crow about, obviously. I mean, we should be in the top 10.
Well, look, over 10 years to get a building built. And you're not talking about changing any standards. You're not watering down environmental provisions. You're making sure that they have the proper servicing. Mm-hmm. You're saying, for goodness sakes, do e-permitting so you can save a lot of time. Make sure municipalities stick to the deadlines. If not, there should be consequences. Make it transparent so you can track a project, right? That just makes sense to me. Now, this audience here, we go from the News Talk 1010 studio where you are today to Ottawa, London, Windsor, and down to Niagara and Hamilton. So would your suggestions in your reports, would it work for those cities as well?
They'd apply to all municipalities equally. So one thing, there may not be as many tall condo towers in some of these other cities, but the same process can be applied for any development, whether it be low-rise, high-rise residential, commercial, institutional. It would benefit all sectors who are in this building and development industry.
There you go. So last question. So you mentioned Singapore, but how about North America wide? Like if it's 10 years in the GTA, we're off in other cities too, what should it be? What's fair and reasonable?
Well, it should be a lot shorter, and actually we have a number of recommendations that would get us there. We haven't set a fixed timeline, but something, site plan approval, for example, 30 days under the Planning Act. The average is 2 years as far as our members are concerned. That shouldn't be longer than 3 months. I mean, and I think that's a fair number because, the industry does pay for these services. These are services that are provided to the industry so we can build buildings. And we're building buildings for people that need them.
Yeah, exactly. And the bottom line is you're actually getting more homeless people to choose from. You get more supply out there. It helps keep prices under control. All right, Richard Lyle from ResCon and Paul DeBerardis from ResCon, the Director of Building Science and Innovation. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Appreciate your reports.